Hello, my name is Grace Blackburn, and I will be speaking on my 18th century historic buildings project. Um, so there's a lot of, I was finding out that there's a lot of interesting historic buildings that were built in the 18th century. So that's the 1700s. And my focus was more in the UK, and I did some regular, like more regular buildings, but most of them turned out to be more churches. Some of them are more famous churches, some of them are just kind of like churches in the countryside, but had some very interesting context and history to it. So the subject or focus context of my project basically is we're looking at 18th century historic buildings and churches in the UK. Um, and there was a specific act that was built into a lot of the churches. There was not a lot of churches in the 1600s in the UK and surrounding areas. And so there was an act passed in Parliament that said that there needed to be at least 50 more churches built, and that just spawned this huge act of building tons of different churches around the UK. And so that's why some of them look really extravagant, some of them look really cool and awesome, and then there's others that are just kind of like these little brick buildings, but they're still churches. So we'll get into that later in the presentation. So the overarching goal of this project is to share some light and some history on these different buildings. A lot of them are forgotten. As you'll see later in the project, as I go through the buildings, some of them, like I said, are really extravagant, and there's a lot of visitors, and there's a lot of people that go to those places. And then there's a lot of people that don't know that these places exist, or they just walk right by them. So it's just kind of like spreading awareness of these different churches, different places, different buildings that you can still go look at, but a lot of them have been forgotten just kind of because of what they look like and where they're sitting. Why does the subject matter? I think that as a historian, I did not know a lot about historic buildings. I know a lot about artifacts and different things in museums and different things of digital content. But as far as like the buildings themselves, I did not really know much about historic buildings, especially in the UK. I've been to London and France once, and I saw a bunch of these buildings, but they were like brand new to me when I went. So I just think that it matters because a lot of buildings matter because a lot of history came from those buildings. And so it is important for us to know what those are and what the history is behind them. Um, and some takeaways that I would like you guys to know. Um, I would like first and foremost for y'all to know like how important they are, how important each one of these buildings are. They're important in their own special way. Some of them, like I said, are big. Like one of them is St. Paul's Cathedral in London. That gets tons of visitors and tons of different people go to that. And then there's other little baby churches that are like in the countryside in London and just as important. So that each of these places are important. And some of them are historic buildings. Like one of them is Blenheim Palace. That is where Churchill's family is from, Winston Churchill. So there's just different kinds of history, and I've been learning that it's just as important to know the building history as it is the key players that are within the buildings. Um, so with that, I will start the presentation. So the first building, like I said, is St. Paul's Cathedral. St. Paul's original building was built way, way before this timeline, but the one that we see today was completed in 1711. This is a beautiful cathedral that is in the heart of London, England, and is still a very active church. And some like small programs for children, academies, different things like that. And this is a stop on the tour bus. So this is a visitor's palace. This is a visitor's place that everyone wants to go. It is under the direction of the Anglican bishop. Um, and this was completed with more modern features. Like I said, it was completed in 1710, 1711. So during the 18th century, this was when the Victorian style was just booming. And so a lot of Victorian era things were put into this building. And so there was extra pillars, there were columns, there were glass windows, there was tons of different things that was just not normal in churches. So you're seeing that a lot in this building. The it was built by Sir Christopher Wren, who was the main architect and construction guy on this job, but he was a huge English architect, and he did 52 churches, and he did tons of other different buildings. So he was a huge architect, English architect, for that time. And there is around 1.7 million visitors a year for this place, not only to look at the architecture, but also to worship. So the second place on our stop is St. Philip's Cathedral. And this land that the church currently sits on was formerly called Barley Close and was donated by Robert Phillips. The property was said to be one of the tallest elevations in the district and matching the height of St. Paul's Cathedral in London, which is really interesting. When the Act of Parliament was issued in 1711 to build more churches, so that was that act that I was talking about earlier, Thomas Archer was ready to build the church. So he was completely ready. He was like, okay, we have the land, let's do this. In 1711, the construction was started and it was completed in 1715. The building was dedicated to the Apostle Philip and Robert Phillips, who donated the land. Construction costs would add up during the building of the church and would end up be estimated around 20,000 pounds, but the record only shows that it was paid about 5,000 pounds. So there was a lot of materials that were donated, a lot of transportation fees that were taken care of. There was a library that was added to the church later in the 1700s to extend the education to all ages. And the denomination of the church is still the Church of England and continues to thrive in that community. The third stop on our tour is the Horsham Unitarian Church. And like I said, some of them are extravagant, some of them look like little brick houses, but still a lot of people go to them. So this church was part of the parish church and is named the oldest Christian church in Horsham. In the beginning of the church's history, it would house the first library in Horsham until 1939. In 1719, the land was purchased by Edward Payne and his wife for £36, which isn't that much money. The land was meant to be the site of the church, but would be completed with the building in 1721. Before the building was actually built, worship and gatherings would happen in barns and in houses and surrounding areas. That's how much Christianity and worshiping the Lord meant to these people. They would go anywhere. This church is registered by the General Baptists and is the second oldest surviving place of worship. It was built to be nothing fancy, but to be a simple place that the community could meet and worship the Lord. And it is still intact today. The fourth place is St. Nicholas Church. This is in the countryside of Burton and sits at a small but gorgeous church located in Ellesmere Port in Nestonshire, England. Sorry, I may have butchered that. But so this is more in the Liverpool area. The exterior of the building is built with red sandstone and gray slat roofs. When looking at the interior of the building, it gives off Gothic and Jacobean design throughout in different areas of the church. The churchyard has 18 tombs with a grouping of 8 raised grave slabs. And there are many aspects of this church that are historically helpful, but it ties the community together and gives a place to worship. That is the overarching theme for a lot of these smaller churches. It is not exactly huge, but it pulls the community together and it gives a place of worship for everyone. The fifth place is not a church. It's called the Ranger House. So this mansion is in London, England, on the southwest side. The architecture of this Georgian medium-sized mansion is red brick from the exterior with the Paladine style. This was previously known as the Chesterfield House, but was changed to Ranger of Greenwich Park due to royal order. It is still intact today. You can go and look at it. It is more of a museum now. The Ranger's house would go through many owners, but would be placed for entertaining only the elites of this time. It is now a museum and a gorgeous place to look at the architecture and views of the countryside. The sixth place on our map is St. Martin in the Fields Church. This church is also in the city of Westminster, London. The name of the church is since it was dedicated to Martin of Tours, who was known for his compassion, humility, and not wanting to take over positions of power. James Gibbs would be commissioned to rebuild the church in 1721, and it would be completed in 1726. This is a current Anglican church that is open for the public for traditional services. Huge cost for rebuilding the church. It was 33,661 pounds. Goodness, which includes the architect fees as well. Throughout the structure, there's Corinthian columns, porticos, galleries, bay windows, panels, and many, many different types of scrolls. There's tons of intricate detail and gorgeous architecture throughout the building. And it is one of the most famous churches in London due to its architecture and the amount of community that it brings. Number 7 is Chiswick House and Gardens. This is a gorgeous Neo-Palladian style home in Chiswick, London, England. It was built by Richard Boyle, 3rd Earl of Burlington, with a garden that is 65.1 acres full of all kinds of vegetation. The garden that is the key player on this property was also designed by William Kent. William Kent is also another huge architect during this time. So this home shows the classic traditions of Italy architecture from the inside out. As you look on the outside of it, this is what a lot of normal Italian architecture would look like. The thought was to have enough space in the villa to hold all of Richard Boyle's art collection that was mainly images of Europe. He also wanted to show off his beautiful furniture that he acquired while he was in Europe. With the stunning architecture and the ancient pieces of furniture, the art villa was put together perfectly, and you can still visit and still look at all the wonderful pieces that he did find. The eighth stop is the Holkham Hall. This beautiful structure was built in the 18th century country located near the village of Holkham, Norfolk, England. This structure was built with the Neo-Palladian style also in mind for the great Thomas Coke, 1st Earl of Leicester. Sorry, I probably butchered that, but the brilliant architecture, William Kent, so he did both of these, was put onto the project of transforming the ideas to reality. The exterior of the property is created with central block and brick with 4 flanking wings. The interior of the property consists of opulent and decorated with simplistic details. So it was gorgeous, but there also had just some little details to it. Sir Edward Coke, the father of Thomas Coke, was one of the overseers of the building. Sir Edward was a lawyer during the reign of Elizabeth I, and this country house was a place for family and fortune and is still open for you to tour today. Now, this 9th place is actually not a particular building, but a structure. It's the Westminster Bridge. This bridge crosses over the Thames in London, which is linking Westminster on the west side to the Lambeth on the east side. I have been across this bridge. It is huge. There are sidewalks on either side, so you can get across if you're a pedestrian, but tons of different cars going in and out. And as you walk across it, you are coming into the main square, which is where Parliament is, Westminster Abbey, and Churchill's War Rooms, and tons of different convenience stores. And so it is in the main heart of the city. On the other side is the London Eye, which is kind of like a carousel looking thing. But you can get on that and see the tops of the city as well. So the bold color and the prominent color are green, which would match the seating on the House of Commons. This bridge is maintained by the Transportation of London. The bridge would assist with many expansions in and throughout London as it would help the development of South London. It helped with traffic going in and out of West End of London and assisted with making being in London more pleasant experience. Thomas Page was the designer. So the 10th stop is Southover General Baptist Church. Again, some of them are elaborate, some of them don't even look like that much, but this is a former church that was nestled away in Lewes, East Sussex, UK. It was founded in 1741 and it was deemed the first Baptist place to worship in that area. Um, it is now part of the District of Lewis. The main attraction to the community was it was part of the General Baptist, which leans towards Unitarianism. It continues to attract many visitors and is one of the first Baptist church in that area. The 11th stop is the Horse Guards building. This is in the city of Westminster, London, between the Whitehall and the Horse Guard Parade. The current building that stands is the second Horse Guard that has been built. Inside the building houses the main military headquarters for the British Empire. It also is to be kept away for security reasons as well as being very close to the horse for law enforcement use. Because policemen do ride horses in London. There's not usually a lot of cars, they're usually on horses, so they need a place to house those. This also houses the Household Cavalry Museum, and it is part of Trooping of the Color when that was still going on. Trooping of the Color was a day to celebrate the Queen, Queen Elizabeth II's birthday, and it was usually in June. And so that is where that would usually start. It was built with brick and only costed £4,000. It also consisted of a clock tower and two large wings on either side. This was also built by William Kent as well. The 12th place is Blenheim Palace. This is where Winston Churchill's family is from. He was born in this palace. This absolute gorgeous castle is in Woodstock, Oxfordshire, England. It was commissioned to be built by Parliament for John Churchill I, Duke of Marlborough. It was built for him due to his military accomplishments and against the French and Bavarians. It was designed by Sir John Vanbrugh alongside of Nicholas Hawksmoor. The garden was finished with the French style in mind and done by Henry Wise. The castle is a culmination of a residence home, mausoleum, and national monument. Like I said, famous Sir Winston Churchill was born here. This is open to the public. I have been there. It is absolutely stunning and gorgeous. You could spend days there. And there are now resorts on the property where you can stay and go up into the castle at leisure. This castle has been in multiple movies, either starring or just in the background. They have opened it up to guest lodging as well. Tons of history in that place. The 13th stop is Christchurch Spitfield. This is an Anglican church and was designed by Nicholas Hawksmoor, who also helped design Blenheim Palace as well. In 1711, Parliament passed an act, like we talked about, to implement new churches in London, and this church was part of that. It was the first church to be built under that act, and it would thrive. They also were forward on having no ties or allegiance to the Church of England. As the church grew, it would be back to the Church of England. They were mainly taken over by the Huguenots, so French Protestants, who would hold baptisms, weddings, and burials there on a regular basis, but not worship services. As the church continued to thrive during the 18th century, they started to conform the normal English lifestyle, including worship styles as well. Fast forwarding to present day, it is still a huge active church with 3 services on Sunday and many programs for all ages. The 14th stop is St. Aidan's Church. This is past Liverpool, so it's not exactly in the heart of London. This church is in Billings, St. Helens, Mearside, England. This is a current active Anglican parish church with the ancestry of Liverpool, so it is very close to Liverpool, but just a little bit north of it. The architect and designer of this project was famous Henry Sefton, who was responsible for many of the construction church projects throughout his career. There was not much talk in rebuilding the church until a merchant, James Scarisbrick, donated £200 to the project. And then they decided that they could probably get that done. The church could seat around 200 people. It was built in stone with stone-slated roofs with beautiful lofts and many galleries. There are also many Doric columns and Gothic touches along the way. The interior is exquisite with beautiful, just different things in the church, an exterior with many columns and many seats to accommodate a lot of people. And you can continue to go there and see that place as well. Now, the last stop on our trip is our 15th stop, which is St. Maudwin's Church, Burton upon Trent. This beautiful church was built in 1719 and will be dedicated in 1723, with finishing the construction in 1728. The denomination of the church was the Church of England. The building materials of the exterior is red sandstone, which was common for a lot of these outside structures, with multiple galleries at the northwest and south areas. The designers of the church were Richard and William Smith, brothers, that unfortunately died close to the end of the construction project, so their youngest brother would take over the project. The church was dedicated to Saint Maudwin, who was an Irish abbess. She was believed to have come over from England in the 7th century. This church is small, but is still very active in the community and holds regular services on Sunday for all who wish to come and worship. So that is the end of my presentation. I hope that y'all learned a little bit about 18th century historic buildings and that you will find it just as interesting as I did. Thank you so much.